Good afternoon, this is Media Center Ukraine Odesa, and we continue our work today. You can watch us online, both on our YouTube channel or in our Facebook page. And if you have questions, you can ask online in the messengers that you can now see on your screen. And our current topic is how the Tuzly Estuaries National Park lives during the full-scale invasion, after the school-fell invasion. And our speakers are Iryna Vykhrystiuk, director of the National Park, and head of the scientific department of Tuzly Estuaries National Nature Park, Ivan Rusev. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And let's start with Ms. Vykhrystiuk. Good afternoon. And our current topic is about how the Tuzly Estuaries National Park lives from the start of the full-scale invasion in February 2022. And of course, when it comes to our current activities, they are affected by the war. For me personally, that was not such a great stress or shock, because those people who are aware that the war in Ukraine started in 2014 had a good understanding of all threats and risks. My colleagues and I, for the second time, experienced this significant stress, because we remembered well how it all started in 2014. We were protected by the God and by the armed forces of Ukraine. And by some miracle, the Bessarabia is somehow protected, maybe by some supernatural forces. And as for the full-scale war, for the second war in a row, in the Azov and the Black coastline of Ukraine, the Tuzly Estuaries National Park is the only operative, because it has not been occupied, neither our territories nor the water area. And this makes it possible for us to work, to perform our duties. And our team is the people with the high level of civil consciousness. And when we were asked about the conflict with local authorities, for me everything was obvious, because and it may be surprising, but in Ukraine, in Bessarabia, or the Tuzly Estuaries National Park was the only pro-Ukrainian state-owned enterprise or institution, taking into consideration what authorities we had and those people who are still in power. And that was the reason for the conflicts and challenges that we faced. We've just returned from yet another meeting in the regional canals. This is the Commission on Environment, and they have some other functions. That's why I have some emotions at the moment. And unfortunately, internally, in our conditionally peaceful life, the situation has not changed that much, because they're the same grey schemes, and what we cannot accept, that the soldiers, the territorial defense, also involved in these things. And I can share more details. And first of all, I would like to say that as we just lived through last year, how we were able to preserve our employees, because that was a significant impact on all of us. Six our members of our team were mobilized during the first days of the full-scale invasion. These are people who worked in the Natural Protection Service. So this area was not covered. 4 men just left at the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. 3 women, the members of our team, our employees, went abroad with their children. And the situation was really very difficult because we had to continue performing our duties because the territories were unchanged, the acreage was unchanged, and it was difficult for us. But last year, we were significantly supported by the water police from Belgorod-Dnistrovsky, and we had common joint raids with them, and we are very thankful to them because they supported us significantly, because forestry did not work back then. People were forced to go on holiday at their own expense. What else happened with our staff? 2 men from Bucha, from Kharkiv, joined us, but then they returned back home. And in spring, 2 experts joined us, the scientists who are our colleagues from the Odesa National Nature Park from the Donetsk Oblast. And unfortunately, they had difficult life that is affected by the aggression, as many other people in Ukraine. In 2014, they left from Donetsk to Mariupol, and at the beginning of April last year, they just barely escaped from Mariupol. And we are happy that they managed, because these are great experts, and at least we were able to support somehow our colleagues. And they find their place in our team, they fell in love with the park, and they feel that they are in Ukraine. And for me personally, it is very painful to see how many professionals, and here I would like to say that the nature protection area in Ukraine and the natural reserves, all of us feel the staff, the employment crisis. And unfortunately, those territories that are occupied, people cannot work there, and they were forced to flee, and some of them left Ukraine to go abroad. And so we felt the lack of resources, and those people, on the other hand, could not stay in Ukraine. As for our work, yes, we just can see the activation of our work, including the research. And since the first day of the full-scale invasion, we started thinking about how we should record the first missile strikes in 2022. The territory of the park was shelled. In one of the estuaries, we have projectiles, and they got there to the silt, and they did not detonate. So demining activities will be needed. Of course, we could not mention the water area of the Black Sea. Our employees during patrolling revealed ship mines, and this is our everyday work since the full-scale invasion and this full-scale aggression. And I was not an exclusion. I felt stressful. And for me, as the head of the institution, I saw what my colleagues shared on the territories that were occupied by Russians. And for me, it was very important to understand how I can preserve our staff, our human resources, and our property. We tried to support the armed forces of Ukraine, first of all, the border guards during the first month until areas of the park were not closed. Our people just patrolled those territories following the requests of the State Bodyguard Service of Ukraine. We also supported them. We found the surveillance means from our colleagues abroad. And these are some optical devices. For us, it was very important to support the representatives of the armed forces of Ukraine. And for us, it was very important because they not only defended Ukraine, but specifically the territory of our national park. Last year, closer to our coastline, and it is also proved by the military, we saw high level of the activity of our enemy. You know that the submarines were very close to us, and you know that there were also some activities before the occupation of this mini island. And we, of course, felt everything because it was close to our territory. But we were able to preserve the 24/7 surveillance point because we have the boundaries of our national park, and we were able to preserve everything. And every day we have surveillance, and that's how we can get the information from the field. We have our people there all the time. Also, we're limited in some areas because some of the areas were mined. But they are the territories, the water area, and we can see what happens with our nature as a result of the aggression. But there are some positive things because the hunting was forbidden and banned, and we can see what is happening with the natural world because the poachers used to be very active there. As for the ecosystems, last year it was problematic for us. But that was not our priority. We could not do anything to ensure water exchange for the water get to estuaries. And the main task of the park is not only the protection and preservation, but also the recovery of ecosystems. Unfortunately, the damage to the nature by human, we need to invest resources to support the environmental status of these systems. And this year we were able to ensure water exchange. That was in May. But then our work was blocked as it was in other years. And the work is blocked by representatives of authorities because usually they just refer to police using the representatives of people's deputies or the former head of the Belgorod-Dnistrovsky digital, the local council, and we had such experience, and then they misinterpret the situation for people, for poachers to fish in Burnas Liman. And I think that you are aware of this if you follow the updates from our national park. This year we've had already a lot of court proceedings, and usually it takes like 2, 3, 4, 5 years to settle this issue. In the Tatanburnare area, there is no local judge. And usually they send the charges from the occupied territories, and this is a business trip, and then these people return. But then we need to start all the court proceedings again. We have the lawyer of the national park. And we have some of the court decisions, and I would like to give floor to Artem to provide brief information about how we protect the interests of the state and nature. Artem Kontushov, can you hear me? Yes, and I'd like to say that the situation of the National Nature Park is unique, because on the one hand there is the support of the Ministry of Ecology and the ecological structures, but on the other hand we have local authorities who are kind of opponents of the National Nature Park. So the situation when the state, with one hand, supports the national park, and with the other hand, impersonated by local authorities, try somehow to damage this national park. This year is the year of victories for the park when it comes to court proceedings. Three very important cases have been finalized. Two of them in the Supreme Court, and once again, there is a clear explanation of what is the territory of the National Nature Park. And people know about this because of this long sand strip, because there are beautiful landscapes there. And this is also a magnet for people who are poachers, who try to occupy those territories. And there is a new decision of the court defining clear boundaries of the National Nature Park. But some other court proceedings are still ongoing, and the national park, with the involvement of the ecological prosecutors, offers to deal with all illegal constructions that unfortunately are on their sand strip, just for them just for these constructions to be disassembled to ensure proper functioning of this territory. But unfortunately, the park has to fight today to properly perform its functions. And also, actually, the park has to fight for being able to meet commitments taken by Ukraine on the EU accession. And perhaps maybe this will be a kind of change here. And the state should be interested in the following, that in the conditions of the full-scale invasion, to ensure the expansion of the territory of the National Nature Park, because this park, the Tuzly Estuaries National Park, is a great example of how a group of former activists representing civil society are really in love with their work. And despite human resources and other resources limitations, they continue their work. And now the military administration can expand the reserve fund of not only the oblast but of Ukraine in general. And there is the only possibility like this in the oblast, where it is now possible. The next year, we still expect the continuation of court proceedings. Unfortunately, the criminal investigations and there are still court decisions take time, but we just struggle for them to be settled as soon as possible. But we can also expect some new cases related with the expansion of the territory of the national park, because now we don't see the understanding that the regional administration is ready to support this, because the park wants to receive the documents needed to expand its territory. And such initiative should be welcome, but unfortunately this is not the case. And the national park unfortunately sees the problems which are related to the interaction with the local authorities and the state bodies. If it is not changed when the state helps with one hand and with the other hand tries just to impede the activities of the park, then we will need to prove that we are right once again in court. And because despite the people who are against the national park, who want just to create the image of the park, of its managers as inefficient or even harmful, but the national park and its team have been proven over the recent years, including in the framework of the court proceedings, that the park and the management are always in the legal field. And we can see also the successful decisions of court proceedings, because the court is always on our side, because we work in the framework, in the legal framework, and we always try to show all the evidence and to support our decision. And now, what is the national park? We always should remember about people, but here we speak about the wild nature that allow us to live, and this produces resources. And we have scientists, and I would like to give floor to Ivan Rusev. He can tell more about that. Good afternoon. My life is to observe and monitor the wild nature. I joined the national park 8 years ago, and I'm proud to work there. During the war, we have seen, on the one hand, terrifying situations and some interesting situations that we have also seen recently. Let's start with the terrible things. The situation is terrible that when the war, the full-scale invasion started, the Russians were already in the water area of the northwest of the Black Sea. They used their sonars, and we can see them from our inspector house. And of course, that affected the wild nature. They used UAVs at night, and then they bombarded our estuaries, and a lot of projectiles are still in there, are still in the silt, undetonated. We had fires in steppes, in forests, on sand, and destroying the nestling of wild birds. And we recorded everything, just all these documents to prove ecocide. But as for the general situation for our estuary and the Black Sea, these are dolphins. They are very important. I have never thought that I will see so many dead dolphins. Once it was in the state Aegean area, and that migrated from Sevastopol to Odesa. And but it happened so that during the war, the first dead dolphins were found on the coastline of our estuary. We collected very important information, but it was very difficult for us during the war to prove to the Ministry of Ecology and the prosecutor's office that this is an important case, and we should require everyone to prove these cases in international courts. It took us a long time to persuade them. We lost a lot of months, but we were able to collect the information about the killed dolphins that were found not only in our national park, but in other parts of the Black Sea. We had access to different sources of Russians, because even they just published information that they had never seen so many dead bodies of dead dolphins because of during the war, and they said that that was because of the infection. But other sources also confirmed that in Turkey and Bulgaria and Romania that they had a lot of dead dolphins on their territories as well. According to our calculations, we monitored 44 kilometers of the coastline, and we could find like 3 dolphins for 1 year. But during the war, when we had only 6 kilometers for surveillance, we found 37 dead dolphins. And so that is a big difference. And according to our calculation, around 50,000 dolphins died in the Black Sea. And no one could imagine that. But this fact had been confirmed by different sources. That was our own information, the publications on the web, other sources. Some this information can be also found in our book that we published. And also there are some criminal proceedings in the framework of ecocide. But hopefully we'll be able to prove this. But unfortunately, we still have not received information about lab tests of samples of dolphins from our park and in Odesa. Unfortunately, it's almost 1 year, but these samples from Italy, another country, and this is also problematic for us because the prosecutor's office cannot conduct in-depth investigation because we don't have the results. I want to say that to recover the population of dolphins, our park has done a lot. We offered to create the big reservation for dolphins up to this main island because from March to November the dolphins feed here. They multiply here, and Ephelina, which is the biggest dolphin here, just give birth to small dolphins once per 2-3 years. But there are now a lot of conclusions. There is a socialization of dolphins because of the war. That's why it requires more time. And such just reservation could help in recovery of dolphins. But we are not supported by the ecology departments and some other institutions. They don't support the approved concept that is needed to meet the international commitments. And our undertaking was the EU is to have 15% of the natural fund objects by 2025, and we need to work a lot. This is what about dolphins, but this is not the case now. But I would like to speak about some good things. Despite the fact that it was impossible to have water exchange, that the level of water was not enough in estuaries, and this is a live system which is feeds on the water from the Black Sea, from rivers, and we could not get to the sea because it was forbidden. The rivers have been destroyed. But despite such a negative situation, for the first time in our part, we had a huge amount of pink flamingo. In 2017, they tried to nest near Crimea and Sivas area of the Kherson Oblast, but they failed, and they tried to do this again. But because the Russians occupied our territory, they have a lot of their equipment now. Flamingo came to our park, and now we have unique conditions in our park for 170 big pink flamingo nestling, giving birth to 192 small flamingos. Now they live in Bulgaria near Burgas, and we are proud that during the war we have such good things, but we continue our work. We continue monitor the Black Sea, the coastline. We collect information, and like to say that this year, with the January, we have seen dead dolphins, but this is because of the Russian troops in Sevastopol, in Novorossiysk, and in Georgia. And there is bombardment near Kimburska Split. And there are dolphins sometimes killed that approach here by the current. We had a lot of other events in the national park, but perhaps this is information for another briefing. Tell us, please, because of the shelling of the Russian occupiers, how many animals died? Do you have such information? The general amount of animals. As for birds, it is very difficult to say because when the shelling is ongoing, we're not there, and the birds they live in flocks that just fly immediately. after the bombardment. And I can say that there are no colonies of very important rare birds. For example, like birds that come from Africa. But as for herons, pelicans, we've had less of them because the fish from the Black Sea could not get into the estuaries, which is the food for these birds. As for the dolphins, we found physically 3,000 dolphins, but according to our assessment, because there is such a hypothesis, it's only 5% of the killed whales or dolphins can be found on the coastline, intertemp. And I would like to say that the national park is an important institution when we come about the liability of the Russian Federation for the ecological damage to Ukraine, because the national park, the natural reserves, they have those scientists and experts that can get evidence to bring Russia to liability. And the same can be said about Belarus when it comes about reimbursement of damage to the environment. When it comes to international crimes with the beginning of the full-scale invasion and always. So today it is very difficult to say that there is one single approach to identify the damage. But the natural park is those innovators, practitioners who can collect evidence. Because scientists and environmentalists, they can understand this situation. You ask Ivan Rusev about the colonies of specific birds. And this is also the impact of the activities of the Russian Federation. And this is very important also when it comes to the International Criminal Court and when it comes to other institutional levels where we will try to bring Russia to liability. And such institutions and this would be the International Criminal Court or some other sorts, they will in detail consider the information provided. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining the Media Center Ukraine today. There have been a lot of questions to the Department of the Ecology of the Regional Military Odesa Administration. We are open. If the department is ready to talk about their position, you're invited. Thank you very much for joining us today. And this is the last briefing for today.
Пам'ять, на історичну пам'ять.